I was awoken by a text at midnight from a patient I'd done surgery on 12 hours earlier, a young man who'd been completely blind for over a year. Here's what it said. Tonight, I was able to look up at the stars and thank God. I haven't been able to do that in years. I tried not to cry, but it hit me so hard. God bless. Now, I'm an eye surgeon. I've been doing this for 40 years, and I've had my share of grateful patients. But here's what haunts me about this one. This young man, he shouldn't have been blind at all. He had cataracts, and he should have had his surgery years ago when they first started to give him trouble. But he's one of 25 million Americans who live in a gap. It's a cruel gap, and it's growing. He's too rich for Medicaid, not rich enough to afford health insurance, and he'd gone completely blind, waiting for a surgery he couldn't afford. And that's not even the crazy part of the story. The crazy part is how I got to do a surgery anyway. A few weeks earlier, I'd gotten a call from this guy. That's Jimmy Donaldson. Some of you may know him better by his internet name, MrBeast. For those of you who haven't heard of him, ask your kids. This guy's the biggest star on the internet with hundreds of millions of followers. And here's what he said to me. He said, I've taken an interest in curable blindness, needless blindness. Find me 1,000 blind people. Let's line them up. Let's fix them all. Let's videotape the whole thing. Let's put it on the internet. Now, I'd never heard of MrBeast at the time, and I have to confess I had a couple of questions. Question number one, is this idea genius, or is it completely insane? And question number two, if he's so interested in curable blindness, in needless blindness, why is he calling a doctor in Jacksonville, Florida? After all, you think about needless blindness, you might think about India. You might think about Africa. You're probably not going straight to Jacksonville. But here's the thing. Maybe you should be. You see, 40 years ago when I first hung up my shingle and opened my door, it didn't take long before people started wandering into my office, blind or nearly blind, with no insurance and no means to pay for curative surgery. Right then and there, I made a simple rule. No one in our city should be blind because they can't afford a simple surgery. We set up a fund we call the Gift of Sight within Jacksonville's Vision charity called Vision is Priceless. The model's pretty simple. Doctors from around the community donate their services. Surgery centers and hospitals donate or deeply discount their services. Generous donors make up the difference. Every year we find between 50 and 100 people in our city who are blind and can't afford the curative surgery they need. Every year, we do them for free. Over the course of these years, over the course of time, we've restored the sight to thousands of our needy neighbors and friends. Turns out MrBeast had heard about it, and that's why he'd come to Jacksonville. And then he told me something that stopped me cold. He said, I'll pay for all these surgeries with the money we make from the video. He said, the stories these people tell are worth so much more to me than the cost of 1,000 surgeries. I said yes. Let me tell you about some of the people who are in the video. This is Gwen. Gwen's been the second baseman on her church softball team and a school bus driver. By the time I met her, all that had become impossible. Little by little, and then all at once, she had gone completely blind. She couldn't tell a red light from a green light, couldn't recognize people's faces, and in fact, hadn't seen her own face in over a year. Cooking was dangerous, working was impossible, and every step outside her house was a terrifying step into the unknown. And here's the part you've probably already guessed. Gwen didn't need to be blind. Gwen had cataracts, a clouding of the lens inside the eye. They're the most common cause of blindness in the world, but also the most curable. The cure is a 15-minute surgery, costs $1,000 or two. It's safe, effective, it fixes this problem forever, and it's quick. In fact, if I were to start right now on Gwen's surgery, by the time I'm done talking, she'd be just about ready to sit up, look around, and wonder if she can get back to work tomorrow. But Gwen lives in Florida, and Florida is one of only 10 states that, when offered federal funds to increase their Medicaid rolls to serve more of their needy citizens, declined. As a result, there are over 3 million people in our state who don't have access to basic health insurance or to cataract surgery should the need arise. We call ourselves the Sunshine State, but we've got more darkness and more blindness than all states but one. Here's Guy. Guy's a salesman, makes a decent living, but his employer doesn't offer health insurance, and he's unable to afford it. When Guy started noticing glare from oncoming lights, he tried to ignore it, but his vision just kept getting worse and worse. One night about a year ago, he was driving home from work when it started to rain. Just like that, the lights of the oncoming cars were utterly blinding. Road lines disappeared, road edges disappeared, and he found himself driving down the center of the road, completely lost, unable to see. After a moment of sheer panic, he managed to maneuver his car over to the side of the road and bring it to a stop. His hands were trembling on the wheel, and he was crying. He had to call a friend to come pick him up, all for want of a 15-minute surgery. Who are these people? Well, they're probably not who you think. They tend to be employed, just not well employed. They're among the 1 in 4 Americans who live paycheck to paycheck without much money in cash or savings. They work in construction, in agriculture, in service industries. To say that differently, these are the people who build our homes, who plant and harvest and cook and service our food. They help raise our children, and they care for our elderly parents. And they deserve better from us. And I'll tell you something else. This surgery, it pays for itself. When these people can see again, they get back to productive lives. In fact, for every $1 we spend on cataract surgery in America, we get back $40 in value. That's not a cost. That's a 4,000% return on investment. But it's an investment we're not making. Why? Now, I'm not here to talk about politics. I'm here to talk about people. And frankly, I don't have time for policy to change because people like Guy and Gwen, they can't wait. They're blind right now. That's why we built the gift of sight. It's not a substitute for universal health care, but it's a bridge. And beyond that, it's proof. Proof that this problem has a solution. Proof that communities like ours can come together in love for our neighbors. Proof that we don't have to tolerate curable blindness in America. And that's where MrBeast comes in. He had heard about our story and he wanted to amplify it. Find 1,000 blind people, film them all, put them on the internet, tell their stories. Very rapidly after that video was released, it blew up the internet. 200 million people watched our little video in the first few months after it popped out. Turns out people love a story about blind people who get to see again. 200 million people is way more people than voted in the last presidential election. It's more people that are going to watch the Super Bowl. Our little video became one of the most popular videos, in fact, on the entire internet. And the comments, there were hundreds of thousands of them. People were surprised and confused and inspired. Surprised that there's so much needless blindness, even here in the United States. Confused that we'd done so little to fix it. And inspired by the story of one town, Jacksonville, Florida, that had taken the effort to address this problem. MrBeast wrote me a check to pay for the whole thing, just as he said he would. But he did something I think even more important. He showed the world that this isn't a problem that doesn't have a solution. It's a problem we're choosing not to see. Once people see it, he told me, they'll want to help. Now we're hoping to take the gift of sight national. That's why I'm here today. The American Society of Cataract and Refractive Surgeons has put together a panel of volunteer doctors from towns all around this country who want to take this model forward. It'll take the help of a lot of generous people like you, but the path is clear and the model works. And if we can do this in Jacksonville, Florida, and we have, there's no reason we can't do it in Jackson, Wyoming, or Jackpot, Nevada, or anywhere. Let me take you back to Gwen. When Gwen heard about our gift of sight, she found her way to my doorstep. A week later, we did her surgery. She was still in the operating room 5 minutes after surgery when she sat up and asked me for a mirror. Somebody found her one. Looking into the face she hadn't seen in over a year, she smiled and said, "Hey, beautiful, you're back." And Guy lived 3 hours away, but he had a friend who drove him 3 hours across the state to my office. Because he lived so far away, I gave him my cell phone number, told him to call me if he was having any problems. He left happy, but that night at midnight, my phone started buzzing. Turns out, it's that text I showed you earlier. Tonight I was able to look up and see stars and thank God. Turns out, Guy wasn't texting me because he was having a problem. He wasn't even texting me to tell me he could see. I already knew that. He was texting me to tell me that he had felt seen and that he was grateful for it. There are thousands more people waiting for someone to see them, for someone to look hard and not look away, to bridge the gap. On behalf of Guy and Gwen and the thousands of people like them in Jacksonville, in Florida, and across this United States, and ultimately around the world, let's get this job done.